Hello? Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the session this morning, which is on children and youth with disabilities. My name is Barka Henry. I'm the Regional Manager for Leonard Cheshire Disability, based in Bangkok, East Asia and Pacific Regional Office. As you know, children and youth with disabilities continue to face marginalization and severe education, social, economic, and civic disparities as compared to those without disabilities. And today, we have a very interesting session where we will have three speakers from Mongolia, Bhutan, and Malaysia who will be presenting very good and presentations on best practices on inclusive education. So we have three speakers, and as I mentioned, it's my pleasure to introduce them one by one. Our first speaker will be Dr. Hanani Bintu Harun Rasid, who holds a Bachelor of Education from the National University of Malaysia, Master of Science in Guidance and Counseling from University Putra Malaysia, and Doctor of Philosophy in Special Education from the National University of Malaysia. She has 26 years of experience in the field of education. She was the head of program at Permata Kurnia Center, a National Autism Center, and was the Deputy Director of Special Education Division, Ministry of Education, Malaysia. Currently, she's the Director of Simeo Sen Center. And the second speaker will be Ms. Prasanthi Pradhan, who has served in the Royal Civil Service in Bhutan for 14 years before she resigned to take care of her son, who, when he was diagnosed with spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy combined with visual impairment and needed intensive care and interventions. She holds a bachelor's degree in agriculture from the Marathawada University in India and a master's by research degree in agricultural sciences from the University of Melbourne, Australia. Ms. Pradhan firmly believes that an inclusive society is possible only if parents of children with disabilities are empowered to be strong advocates for the children, and in pursuit to empower the parents, she co-founded FENSIM Parent Support Group Bhutan with two other mothers informally in 2017, and FENSIM Support Group was formally recognized as a public benefit organization under the Civil Society Act of Bhutan in 2020. And a third speaker will be Ms. Gerald Thur, who's graduated from Itstruk State University, Russian Federation in 1991 as a speech therapist, has broad experience working with children with intellectual disability, and has been working in special school for children with intellectual disabilities for 27 years. For the last 5 years, she's working at the Ministry of Education and Science, Mongolia. She's responsible for children with disabilities, children of national minorities, and children living abroad. She was involved in drafting and adopting 13 legal documents on equal inclusion of children with disabilities in education. Without further ado, we will now start the presentations from our speakers. And just to remind the speakers that there are participants who are attending virtually, and there are persons with disabilities who is using live speech language interpretation. So I request you to go kindly slow with your presentation. So I request the first speaker, Dr. Hanani, to come up on stage and present your presentation, please. Welcome, Doctor.
Good morning. It's a pleasure meeting all of you today, and I'm honored to be part of this prestigious conference. Thank you, the moderator, for introducing me. And today I'll be sharing on Simeo UNESCO GPE Disability Inclusive Teaching in Emergencies, or better known as DTEAM online course. I think first I would like to introduce a bit about Simeo Sen. Simeo Sen is one of the 26 Simeo centers under the Simeo Secretariat, and Simeo Sen is located in Malaysia. And the vision is to be a leading center for quality teaching and learning in special educational needs. Okay, in ensuring the continuity of learning for learners with disabilities during unprecedented situations, CIMEO, UNESCO, and Global Partnership of Education, GPE, have collaborated and developed an online learning module called DTEAM Online Course. And CIMEO Sen was tapped in to provide the expertise on disability and inclusive education as the subject matter expert. And DTEAM is available in 8 languages, mainly English, Indonesia, Laotian, Thai, Vietnamese, Dzongkha, Tetum, and Khmer. There are 4 modules, okay, for this DTEAM online course. The first one is on stress management and psychosocial support. The second module is on utilizing different assistive technologies. The third module is on developing an emergency response plan. And the fourth module is on continuity of learning. A bit on the module. The first module is on stress management and psychosocial support. So the module enlightens participants on the effective interventions on stress management and strategies to provide psychosocial support to the educators and also to learners with disabilities. Participants will gain competencies in tapping others' potentials in assisting family at home, in school, and also in the community around them. The module elaborates on the benefits of these interventions for the well-being of learners with disabilities. Next, Module 2, it is on utilizing different assistive technology devices. The participants will learn about different types and functions of assistive technology devices and its benefits for learners with disabilities. Participants will be able to determine assistive technologies that are appropriate for learners with disabilities, as well as how the devices can be modified and adapted to facilitate learning process of learners with disabilities, especially during emergencies. Moving on to the third module. This module is on developing Okay, this module is on developing emergency response plan, okay? And the module equip learners or the participants with knowledge and skills related to disaster risk reduction at school. And the module also teaches the participants on how to mitigate the impacts of disasters on learners with disabilities, following inclusive principles in emergency planning and response. And the final module is on continuity of learning. I'm so sorry because there's a mistake on the slide, okay? The fourth module will be on the continuity of learning. Participants will be able to learn more about the importance of ensuring educational services are continuously delivered and how a safe and inclusive space can be created. The module identifies strategies in helping with remote learning transitions, reopening of schools, apart from the best practices in supporting learners with disabilities as they prepare themselves to go back to schools. Overall, this DTEAM online course can serve. We are very positive that this module can serve as one of the solutions to prepare educators so that they are well prepared and they are ever ready, okay? They are ever ready in facing unprecedented challenges due to disasters, okay? Okay, in 2022, the team was relaunched in 6 countries: Vietnam, Timor-Leste, Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. And okay, as of September, there are 2,694 enrollees and only 774 completers, okay? Mostly the completers come from the targeted countries, okay? I'm going to share on Simiosen initiative, and this is a case study in Malaysia. Simiosen, together with Special Education Division, initiated the team advocates, and we appointed 182 completers as the team advocates for 1 year. The completers is 1.7% out of 16,000 plus special education teachers. And their role is to promote the team online course and to provide consultation to give guidance on how to complete the team online course. And we also conducted a small survey with the D-Team advocates, okay? 60% answered the survey, 96% responded that D-Team is beneficial, and 93% said that they have implemented the content across as a cross-curricular elements, and they have implemented the content of the team module in their teaching and learning process. And they have also guided one teacher, at least one teacher, and at most 30 teachers, okay? But this is individual effort in their own state and also district. This is not a state effort or nationwide effort, okay? But the Special Education Division is now organizing workshops to prepare promotional materials and also some sort of toolkits to help the D-Team advocates to consult and give the guidance to those enrollees so that more teachers, we have 16K special ed teachers that should be reached out, and we hope that they can complete the D-Team online course, okay? All right, so I think we hope, Simiosen hopes that this kind of initiative can be extended to other Simio member countries. Maybe we will rope in the governing board members, because we have governing board members from each 11 Simio member countries, and most of them are with the Special Education Division in their respective countries. So hopefully more teachers can enroll and complete the D-Team course, and for sure it will benefit the learners with disabilities. Okay, I think that's about all. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hanani, for your brilliant presentation. And I think one of the key factors contributing to, the heightened vulnerability of children with disabilities in these emergency situations is a lack of information and resources. And in instances where this information is available, they are inaccessible. We're running very short of time, and it's my pleasure now to invite a second speaker, Ms. Prasanthi Pradhan, who will be sharing FENSIM's efforts to bridge the gap in education for children with disabilities from the parents group perspective.
Kuzuzangpo. I bring you warm greetings from the parents living in the tiny kingdom of Bhutan. My name is Prashanti. I am primarily a mother of 2 children, one of whom is living with multiple disabilities, and I am one of the co-founders of Pensem Parent Support Group Bhutan. And today I'm here to share our story, share our efforts in what the parents in Bhutan are trying to do to bridge the gap in education. So Pensem actually started as a friendship many years ago between 3 mothers. And when we realized, we met, each other walking in and out of therapists' rooms and schools, and we instantly connected and we bonded. And we realized that we derived a lot of support from each other, most of it emotional. And we wanted to expand this to other mothers, parents actually, who were undergoing similar life situations. So the concept of a parent support group was born in July 2017. And Pensem started with 7 families over a cup of coffee. And come July 2020, bang in the middle of the pandemic, we were registered and recognized as Bhutan's first legally recognized and registered parent group. We are very proud of that. And our vision is to see a Bhutan where parents are empowered enough to be able to strive towards an inclusive society. Currently, most of our parents are not as educated. In fact, a lot of them, especially in the rural areas, are completely uneducated. And they are not aware of their children's rights and not confident to be able to voice their concerns. And, children and persons with disabilities in Bhutan are still viewed as objects of sympathy and through the lens of charity. We want to change that perception to the fact that persons with disabilities have the same rights as any other citizen of Bhutan. Subject matter specialists, academics, therapists, they have all studied the subject, but we parents have lived the life. And we strongly believe that we are at the forefront on that path towards an inclusive society. How many of you in the audience are parents? Thank you. When the pandemic hit, wasn't life terrible? It turned everything upside down. Our children couldn't go to school. We couldn't take them out to play. Travel was unthinkable. And, living in those closed compounds or walls, it was so suffocating, right? Well, guess what? For parents of children with disabilities, life has always been this way. We cannot take our children to the school that is most convenient for us. Travel is very, very limited, and incomes are lost because normally when your child is diagnosed with a disability, one of the parents has to give up. This is in Bhutan's context, okay? Has to give up their job to look after the child, and in most of the cases, it is normally the mother who is the casualty, and I'm one example. Well, today this conference is about equitable education, and in Bhutan, for parents of children with disabilities, accessing education is the most significant challenge. Pre-COVID and post-COVID, it's the same. It's still accessing education. It is still the challenge for us. And I always like to show this slide with the words that were spoken by His Majesty our King. It is a guiding philosophy for us, and we are inspired by these words because, yes, we believe that education is a social equalizer. And for us, as a parent support group, these are the barriers that we face in terms of accessing education. Bhutan, as you know, is a physically difficult terrain. The country has very difficult terrain, so physical barriers are obviously there, but besides that, there's financial difficulties, there's acceptance by the parents as well as the schools, and there's the school ranking system and confusing literacy with education, because we believe that education is much more than the ability to read and write. It is about learning to live in society. So these are all the factors, but I just want to focus on point number 4, which says designated schools for SEND programs. So as parents, we want our children to be productive members of society, not just recipients of services. And for this, the primary requirement is for our children to be able to get an education. Vocational trainings and employment, everything comes much later. And it is very sad, it's a sad truth, that it is very difficult for our children to get accepted in ECCD centers and schools. And at the moment, we follow an integrated system of education where there is one designated school in every district which offers SEND programs. And the children in these classrooms, the children with the disabilities, are either in the mainstream classrooms, pull-out classrooms, or self-contained units, depending on the disability. And we parents dream of a future where every school and every ECCD center in Bhutan is inclusive, so that we don't have to take our children to that one designated school. And for that to happen, what we have seen that parental involvement is number one. It is very, very crucial. And in 2020, when the pandemic hit, schools were operating mostly on online modes. And it was very difficult for parents who are uneducated to even try and attend a virtual meeting on Zoom. It was a Herculean task for them. And it was easy for them, to give up hope. And that is when we started a small program. It was actually a workshop meant to facilitate transition for the children to go back to school when the lockdown ended. But it ended up being having such a great impact that we started a project this year with support from Perkins International. It's called Positive Future Planning, and it is basically just a nicer name to person-centered planning. So right now that is happening with us, and just to tell you about the road ahead. We have big plans, but we don't have time to tell you about all of it today. So I just want to focus on a few things. And we're planning to expand. Pensum right now is Thimphu-centric because it was started by parents who live in Thimphu. So now our plan is to take it forward to the districts and also sensitize the other parties, the other stakeholders in the districts. And collaboration, of course. Since yesterday we've been talking about partnerships and collaborations. This cannot be done alone. So, as I told you before, if we want to make inclusive education a reality, then the school cannot do it alone, the parents cannot do it alone. There has to be a strong partnership started, and we are doing this. This is the road ahead for us. And then there is also, I just want to briefly touch upon a little project that is happening, which is again a collaboration between the government and the non-government sectors, which is called Multi-Country Study of Innovations of Out-of-School Children and Children at the Risk of Dropping Out. So this is, Pensum plays a very key role in providing technical information as well as feedback on the effectiveness of the activities that are going to be rolled out as a part of this project. And our mantra, empower. Parents, we look at empowering of parents, and I already told you about the Positive Future Planning project that we are currently doing, and we have also set up drop-in center for parents where we look after peer counseling and self-care, and now a small part of the drop-in center has also been converted into a family resource center where we will use the space to impart skills to parents, starting from sharing of simple ideas to equipping them with knowledge on how to participate in their child's education. And I want to thank the organizers for giving this small group from a tiny country the opportunity to share our story with you today. And our contact details are here. We can be found on Facebook, and we have a web page. And that is our tagline: of the parents, by the parents, for life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Prasanthi, for your very interesting presentation. And as you've rightly mentioned, a child with disability should have the same opportunities as any other child. But caring for a disabled child or a youth is challenging. And even the most experienced parents and carers sometimes need to turn out for help and support. And again, there aren't enough resources, like we mentioned, in the community. And most importantly, the development disabilities are not very well understood in the community or within families and also schools. And children with these kind of disabilities typically remain mostly in their houses. And families with developmentally delayed children really find it often very difficult to cope. So therefore, I think it's really essential that educational support mechanisms are tailored to support and help families cope. And a lot of time, parents, families of children with disabilities, even through some of our project interventions, really don't know who or whom they should reach out to. And I think FENSIM's support group really addresses this, and also advocating the needs and the rights of children with disabilities to access meaningful educational opportunities in all spheres of life. So thank you, Ms. Prasanthi. So I now would welcome our third speaker, Ms. Gerald Tua. She will present us the inclusive education priorities of the Ministry of Education and Sciences, Mongolia. Ms. Gerald here, welcome.
За сайн байцгаана уу? Анх удаа монгол хүн ярьж байгааг сонсож байгаа хүн байна уу?
Good morning, everyone. I'm from Mongolia. Have you ever heard about Mongolian language?
Тэгэхээр би боловсролын яамд ажилладаг. Гэхдээ би яг оюуны бэрхшээлтэй хүүхдтэй 25 жил ажилласан багш хүн байгаа.
I am the Senior Officer, Equitable and Inclusive Education Department from Mongolia, Ministry of Education and Science.
Тэгэхээр өнөөдөр бол Монгол улс яг хөгжлийн бэрхшээлтэй хүүхдтэй ямар анхаарал хандуулж байгаа, юу хийж байгаа талаар та бүхэнд товчхон ярина.
I would like to talk about the children with a disability in Mongolia, how they access the education.
За энэ слайдн дээр та бүхэн харж байгаа доктортой хөгжлийн зорилт дөрвийг бүгдээрээ мэдж байгаа. Тэгэхээр энэ дээр хөгжлийн бэрхшээлтэй хүүхдэд ямар анхаарал хандуулах талаар заасан заалт байна.
As you see on the slide, there's a sustainable development of Mongolian goals in 2030.
Тэгэхээр энэ доктортой хөгжлийн зорилтыг хэрэгжүүлэхийн тулд Монгол улс алсын хараа 2050 гэдэг бодлогын баримтчиг боловсруулсан.
From these sustainable development goals, we have our vision 2050.
Тэгэхдээ эндээ болохоор боловсролын салбар бүрт иргэдийн боловсролын үйлчлэгэнд дэг шамруулах зорилгыг тусгасан.
In this vision, in each education level, inclusive and equitable goals are reflected.
Энд хамгийн гол нь энэ боловсролд хамрагдаж чадахгүй байгаа эрсдэл бүлгийн суралцагч нэг бүрт шаардлагатай дэмжлэгийг үзүүлж боловсролд их шамруулна гэдэг зорилтыг одоо тусгасан.
It also aimed to provide access to education services who are dropped out from the vulnerable groups, drop out of the school and vulnerable groups.
Энэ 2050-аас боловсролын яам одоо 2030 он хүртэлх төлөвлөгөө боловсруулсан байгаа. Дунд хугацааны төлөвлөгөө.
And also from this vision, 2030, we have aims to ensure the development of Mongolian citizens to engage the quality education and exclusive education for the needs.
Та бүхэн харж байгаа эхнийхт нь бол бид нэр зорилтоо дэвшүүлсэн байна. Хойдолт нь одоо ямар үр дүн гарахаа бичсэн байж байгаа. Энийг ингээд сургуулийн өмнөх боловсрол, бага дунд боловсрол, мэрэгжлийн болон техникийн боловсролын сургалт, дээд боловсролд ямар зорилт дэвшүүлж, ямар үр дүнд 2030 онд хүрэхэд тусгасан байгаа.
As you see in the slide, we have a preschool education, primary and secondary education, and technical and vocational education and training, and also higher education. That from the government plan, these are the goals, but at the second line, that will be the outcomes and expected for the preschool education and primary school and others.
За ер нь бол би жишээлбэл боловсролын яаманд ажилладаг. Миний хариуцдаг ажил бол хөгжлийн бэрхшээлтэй өвгөд үндэсний цонх хөлийн чанадах хүүхдийн асуудлыг хариуцдаг.
I am the responsibility for the exclusive education with children with the disabled and the youth and the ethnic in Mongolia.
Тэгвэл боловсролын яам бол дэг шамруулах боловсролдоо одоо та бүхний харж байгаа энэ слайдн дээр байгаа бүх хүрээг одоо хариуцаж ажилладаг.
And then the Minister of Mongolia of Education and Science, we take care of the inclusive education policy directly to the person with disability and herder household members, migrant household members, and ethnic minorities, and gender. And the last one, member of the poor household and those who were discriminated and sorry.
Жишээлбэл одоо энэ хугацаа их орох учраас би яг өөрийнхөө хариуцдаг юм дээр жишээлбэл хөгжлийн бэрхшээлтэй хүүхдэд бид нэр ямар одоо бодлогын чиглэл барьж байгаагаа хэлье.
If I read all of this, it will be take more time, so I try to summarize on this slide.
Биднэрт бол одоо бусад сурвалжлагчийн хамт боловсрол эзэмших орчин нөхцөлийг бүрдүүлэх ажил 1 номерт байгаа. Туслах багшийг бэлтгэх ажил 2 номерт, эцэг эхийн оролцоо, нийгмийн хандлагыг өөрчлөх, эцэг эхийн оролцоог дэмжих одоо түрүүний өмнөх илтгэгчийн хэлсэн шиг эцэг эхийн оролцоог дэмжих ажил чухал байгаа. Бас одоо сургалтын хэрэглэгдэхүүн, шин технологи нэвтрүүлэх, за хөтөлбөр, үнэлгээ арга зүйг бас сайжруулах ажил бас энэ чиглэлд тусж байгаа.
For the person with the disability, I more focus on this time. So what we are directing is environment and condition to study together with the other students, and also train the teacher and assist the teachers, promoting parents' understanding and participation, learning materials for the different needs, and curriculum and environment for all levels of education, flexible organization of education and training at all levels.
Үндэсний цөөнхийн асуудлыг бас энд дүртээ. Үндэсний цөөнх гэдэг бол манайд 2 үндэстэн байдаг. Монгол, Казак гэсэн 2 үндэстэн байдаг.
As you see there, we have minorities of ethnics. We only have one, and including our Mongolian nations.
Тэгэхээр одоо яг үндэсний цөөнхийн Казак хүүхдийн асуудал дээр бид нэр хос хэлний боловсролын бодлогын асуудлыг чухалчилж байгаа.
We have the Kazakh ethnic. We also provide them bilingual language education policy.
Үндэсний цөөнхийн бага ангийн сурагчдын хэрэгцээ сонирхолд нийцсэн монгол хэлний гарын авлага зөвлөмж зэрэг нэмэлт одоо бүтээгдэхүүн хэрэгтэй байгаа.
Additionally, we also want to provide the Mongolian language guidelines and the materials and documents for them.
Орон нутгийн оролцоо санал санаачлагыг бас бид нэр дэмжих хэрэгтэй байгаа. Орон нутгийн оролцоог бол энэ ажил бас явахгүй байгаа.
And also we collaborate with the local administration.
Хос хэл заах арга зүй маш чухал байгаа. Яагаад гэвэл Баян Улгийн аймгийн одоо багш нар монгол хэлний одоо заах арга зүй бас тутмаг байдаг учраас.
In that ethnic, we call them Kazakh. The teachers are not able to fully speak Mongolian language, so we need to train the teachers in order to teach Mongolian, the majority language.
За бусдын нууд би одоо дараа нь асуултанд хариулах хэрэгтэй гэж.
So if you want more to know, you can see the slide, and later you can have question from me personally.
За энэ слайдн дээр болохоор цаг яваад тань одоо айгүй төвшөрт юм. Энэ слайдн дээр болохоор одоо хөгжлийн бэрхшээлтэй хүүхдийн асуудалд биднэрт ямар асуудал тулгарч байгаа тухай байгаа.
This chart will show us children with the disabilities and number of the children who are access to education, and then with the problems we have with the children with the disabilities.
За дараагийнх дээр бол манай энэжлийн хамрагдалтын одоо тоо баримт байж байгаа.
This is the specific number for the children with disabilities. You can see.
Энэ жишээлбэл та бүхэн харж байгаа бах энэ жилийн одоо сургуулийн өмнөх боловсрол хамрагдах ёстой 9928 хүүхэд хөгжлийн бэрхшээлтэй хүүхдээс хамрагдсан хүүхэд нь 1023 хүүхэд байгаа.
We have children with the disabilities 1,928. From that, only access to education preschool children number with the 1,023.
За тусгай 3 цэцэрлэг байдаг. Тэрэнд 311 хүүхэд байгаа.
And the special kindergarten and special schools, there are numbers.
Бус нь бол ердийн цэцэрлэгтэй хамрагдсан гэсэн. За сургууль нь мөн яг адилхан энийг ингээ харж байна. Одоо цаг дуусах гэдэг учраас
I don't have much time. I'm sorry, so I move to the next slide.
Энэ дээр нэмж хэлэхэд дээд сургууль 400 оюутан.
For this slide, additionally, I want to say the student with disabilities, 400 students.
Техникийн одоо коллежид мэрэгжлийн сургалтанд 777 одоо оюутан хөгжлийн бэрхшээлтэй оюутан хамрагдсан байгаа.
And also technical vocational education training students, 777 students access to education.
За би хамгийн гол юм ярья. COVID-19-ийн үед бид нар юу хийсэн бэ гэж.
Okay, this is for the pandemic time for the education level.
COVID-19 үед Монгол улс 5-9 гэдэг стратеги барьсан.
The Mongolian Ministry of Education reformed the strategy 5/9.
За тэгээд энэ дээр болохоор ийм стратеги барьсан учраас сургууль дээр кластер хэлбэрээр COVID-19 халдвар бол одоо маш бага гарсан, бараг гараагүй гэж хэлэхэд болсон.
From this strategy, it was very successfully worked, and from this, as you see the lines, number of the infection was very low in the school.
Тэгэхээр энэ дээр та бүхэн харж байгаа энэ схемэн дээр харахаар ер нь бол одоо нэг анги 2 хуваасан гэсэн үг. Одоо анги 2 хуваагаад нэг хэсгийг нэгт өдөр хичээлүүлээд 1-7 хоногт нь дараагийн 7 хоногт нь гэрт нь байлгаад ингээд одоо амралтын өдрүүдтэйгээ нийлээд 9 өдөр гэртээ байх ийм стратеги барьсан гэж тавчхандаа хэлж байна.
So what is this 5/9 strategy? Strategy is we divide the one classroom into 2 groups, and then they switch the classroom to one by one. The first class will be study 5 days and 9 days online, and including the weekends day. So infection will be much lower.
Энэ үедээ бид нар бүх л одоо хүүхдэд хүрч болох бүх арга хэмжээг авсан. Онлайн хичээл явуулсан.
During this time, COVID time, we had online classes.
За онлайн хичээлээ дохионы хэлний орчуулгатай эсвэл казак хүүхдэд зориулсан казак хэлээр онлайн хичээлээ бэлдсэн.
Online and TV lessons are presented in the broadcaster, and together with the special children disabilities, the language, sign language, including sign language.
Интерактив хичээл хийсэн. За мөн хүүхдүүдэд зориулсан одоо манайх ч нөгөө хөдөө орон нутагт хүүхдэх байдаг учраас бие даах гарын авалга дэвтрийг тараасан.
And also the schools and education organization provide the materials and the workbooks and to provide the children to access and follow up the TV lessons.
Тэгээд энэ ажлуудад UNICEF, Хүүхдийн эвэг сан, Дэлхийн банк одоо гадаадын түншлэгч байгууллагууд маш сайн идэвхтэй дэмжсэн.
For this collaboration, we work with many organizations, UNESCO, UNICEF, and the Save Children and Mongolian Ministry of Mongolian Education and Science.
Миний цаг дуусчлаа ингээд би цааш нь өргөн.
So my time is out. Thank you for your attention. Please ask question later personally. Thank you.
Тэгээд одоо бүх юмаа ярих шатсангүй дараа нь асуулт. За уучлаарай тэгээ орчуулгатай байсан учраас цаг идчихлээ.
Thank you.
Baitla, I've just learned that word while I was in Mongolia. So thank you very much, Ms. Gerald here, for your presentation. And I think one of the really commendable initiative of the Ministry of Mongolia that I personally witnessed was using technology to assist visually impaired children during school closures. The lessons were actually broadcasted on the national TV, so that was really, really good initiative, and I think they reached out to more than 10,000 children with disabilities in the Garrison communities. So we thank all the speakers for your presentation, and now we'll move on to our next session, which is a panel discussion, and I would request our speakers to kindly come on the stage. Hello. So thank you very much again, all the speakers, for your brilliant presentation. So we'll spend about another 40 to 45 minutes for a quick round of discussion. And I'm going to ask a question to all our speakers. And it will be helpful if you could take around not more than 5 minutes with your responses. But I've been informed that we have time, so we can spend some more time around discussing around the questions. After that, we'll also open the floor for Q&A from participants. So my first question to our speakers is, what are your current strategies in ensuring inclusive education and equity for children with disabilities in the work that you're currently doing? We can begin with Dr. Hanani.
Okay, thank you. My answer will be specifically referring to the DT module, and Simeo-san currently is moving towards the implementation of inclusive, accessible, and adaptable materials in ensuring equity for all learners. And we are putting our effort in ensuring that the materials, especially the online materials, okay, are accessible, and we should ensure that it is fulfilling the inclusive, open educational resources policy. We are working towards that, and to provide quality education access to all learners, especially persons with disabilities. And we also try to ensure that the materials are adaptable, meaning that the materials are well comprehended by the audience so that the materials can be adapted to the local context, okay? And of course, the content of the modules, okay, especially the team, are cut across every aspect which respects diversity and the different needs and abilities, characteristics and learning expectations of the students and communities, and to eliminate the discrimination towards persons with disabilities. So the module is accessible to persons with disabilities due to the accessible layout, and the learning modules are produced in such a way so that all the videos are accessible. And of course, when I mentioned that the modules are available in the 8 different languages, because the team is meant to be accessible, to be comprehensible by different speakers of languages, okay? Therefore, the elements of inclusiveness, accessibility, and adaptability in learning materials are emphasized, and of course in other online materials that are produced by Simiosen, we strive hard to fulfill the inclusive, open educational resources policy. That is my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hanani. That's really interesting, and having accessible information online really makes it easier for children and persons with disability to access. But have you come across any instance where there has been any challenges, particularly for children and parents or people with disabilities to access this information?
Yes, of course. For an example, on Simiosen's website, we share all our online courses and also materials, and we have suggestions or complaints from our viewers telling us that some of the materials are not accessible. One, of course, the materials are in English, and there are viewers or participants of our courses from a few countries who complain that they are not able to understand, and then those with a visual impairment. That is before we opt that inclusive, open educational resources. So our materials are not accessible. The slides, the PowerPoint slides cannot be read by people with visual impairment, and we learn our lesson, and we try to improve on that. And of course, we even though we are the center promoting inclusive education and advocating for special educational needs, and we have a lot to learn. And of course, I'm focusing on the online materials, and we try to make sure that the materials that we post on our website are accessible. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nani. because a lot of this information are online these days. You know, there's definitely the ongoing challenge wherein people with disabilities or children can't access them. And it's very important that we take, feedback from them, and also try to update the websites regularly. Because a lot of time we have these accessible materials and everything's online, and we then leave it as it is. So, thank you, Dr. Hanani. And I'll move on to Ms. Prasanthi, please, for your answer.
A few of the strategies that we are currently following in Bhutan. During the pandemic, we realized that we don't have an inclusive social protection policy. So that is the first thing that we have started doing as soon as we got back to work. Like there are bits and pieces covered in, like, for example, National Policy for Persons with Disabilities, there's the National Policy for the Rights of Children, the Labor Act, etc., etc. But they're like little bits, you know, here and there, and it was not inclusive. So right now what is happening is work is going on. It is a collaboration between the government and the non-government sectors. We are going with the concept of leaving no one behind and addressing all the needs of all the vulnerable groups. So this goes beyond inclusive education. It caters to everybody that's been left behind. So that is the one thing that is happening right now, the work towards an inclusive social protection policy. And another sector, let's say, not sector, another point that was found to be very important during, again, the pandemic was the mental health. So what we have done is also, now the government has recognized its importance, and an entire institution has been set up. It is called the PEMA Center, and everybody is working collaboratively for the mental well-being of the entire Bhutanese society. So these are the things that are happening. And then from PENSEM's side, like I told you earlier, we have started to work towards expanding PENSEM to take it, we call it PENSEM chapters in the different districts where parents will be taught and encouraged to form groups. And then the empowerment of parents is happening. Besides education, we are focusing a lot on the well-being and the mental health of the parents, because you've got to take care of yourself first before you can take care of your child with disability. And just to talk a little bit about the multi-country study of innovations of out-of-school children and children who are at the risk of dropping out, because I couldn't say much about it during my presentation because time was very short. So this is a 2-year study that is happening, and it is currently covering Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. And it is being led forth by the Paro College of Education under the Royal University of Bhutan. So it is a collaboration between multiple stakeholders. We have the Ministry of Education, we have the schools, we have civil society organizations, the private sector, and PENSEM, of course, is representing the parents who will ultimately be the beneficiaries of the activities that are going to be rolled out. And the key role we play is in providing feedback on whether these plans that are being rolled out are working or not.
Thank you, Ms. Prasanthi. And I think, again, the FENSIM's parents group's role really stands out in all these initiatives that you mentioned. And again, under this whole vulnerable group, the children with disabilities, again, get sort of lost. So the constant advocacy and, lobbying is essential. And really good to hear of all the initiatives. Thank you. Ms. Geraldine, can I go to you for your answer, please?
Би асуултаа бэлтгээд орчуулагчдаа хариултаа бэлтгээд өгсөн байгаа.
I will already prepared the question, so my interpreter will read it. For the question 1, children with the disabilities, we have a cooperation between health and education and local protection are mainly focused on update technology and early detection, and also educational institutions include the children in early intervention programs and provide the local welfare to children and their guardians, and also support their employment. Policy of inclusive education investigates increase in the participation of assistant teachers and support the staff. In 2021, methodology for the comprehensive support for children with disabilities was approved by the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, and Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. For the gender, following issues are being resolved with the interdisciplinary participation. So in 2000, the Vision 2050 long-term development policy of Mongolia, the goal of ensuring education institution 19.8% of general education schools, 65% of vocational education institutions, and 38.7% of higher education institutions have male teachers. Moreover, there are some gender-related issues such as insufficient number of female teachers and student-enrolled education courses, and training and awareness also raising activities eliminate the gender and increase the positive local social awareness of gender are organized with the support of Lifelong Education Center.
Thank you, Ms. Charity. And the work of the ministry is really, really commendable. I've personally witnessed a lot of your programs in Mongolia, and it's really impressive to see how you work around the systems around the child with disability, and not just focus on child with disabilities. So you're reaching out to parents, caregivers, providing trainings, and also working with school institutions and so on. So it's really good initiative and work of the government that's ongoing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Baka. I would like to announce that we got a Mentimeter, if the audience didn't notice, also on the online. So you can go menti.com and use the code 24133078 to log in your questions. You can do it with the laptop or you can do it with your phone. You can also, online participants can jot in questions or suggestions for solutions to Menti. These questions might be asked during this session. If there are good interventions or suggestions of solutions, these might contribute to the conference outcome document as well. So if your topic which you signed in here is not raised during the session, we might still use it in the future documentation of the conference. So all the contributions are appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll move on to my next question. So again, I will ask this question, and if you could take turns to answer, that'll be really helpful. So what are the key factors that we have to address to bridge the gap of children with disabilities? Probably some examples from your work that you're currently doing.
Okay. For Simiosen, I think most of our work, we are focusing on training educators, teachers, but there are other enablers or catalysts in ensuring that accessibility to education. And those parties are the parents or the caregivers, and also the advocates for learners with disabilities. And I think starting from I mean, during the pandemic 2020, 2021, Simulsan has organized webinars, and we invite parents and also advocates to join our training, because we believe that parents, like what mentioned by Prashanti, that parents are really important. I give you an example for D-Team online training. The course is meant for teachers, but let's say if online learning is happening, teachers need parents to support the children at home. And I've enrolled and completed the D-Team course, and the materials are also meant for caregivers, and the advocates in the form of the NGOs or the community supporting the learners with disabilities. I think pulling them in, okay, to be trained, to empower them, as what our second speaker has been explaining, okay, empowering the caregivers, the parents. I think that is the key factor in ensuring this inclusive and accessible education for learners with disabilities. Okay, and I think in the future, Simulsan will involve parents as trainers, not only as participants in all our training. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hanani. And just starting up to another question around your response, there was this where you mentioned about teacher training. And as we know, in most of these mainstream schools where children with disabilities are enrolled, the turnover of the teachers are really, really high as well. So once you train a whole set of teachers, and then the turnover is high, how do you address the challenge, and how do you sort of roll out those trainings again?
I can only give you an example of what's happening in Malaysia, okay? In Malaysia, I think the turnover is not that high, because the teachers, because the Ministry of Education forecast the need of teachers in the schools, okay, and the number of teachers are trained according to the needs of the schools, but there is always not enough teachers to be sent to the schools, and that is one. And then the second thing is the mismatch of the posting of teachers. Let's say there are teachers who are trained to teach students with visual impairments and hearing impairments. They have specific skills, doing braille and the sign language. But they are posted to schools where they are assigned to teach students with learning disabilities. This is happening in Malaysia, and this makes the training is, the inadequate number of teachers is a prolonging problem, and I think the effort which is taken by the Ministry of Education is to have this in-service courses and tracking, the tracking system, to relocate the teachers to, specific schools, and also for the in-service, for the pre-service teachers, there is a specific course introduced which is called the inclusive education, whereby all the future teachers need to learn about students with special needs and also how to teach them. Because there are students who are in the mainstream classes, and the teachers need to be able to, to teach them and not to reject them. I think that is what I can share from what is happening in Malaysia.
Thank you, Dr. Hanani. And that was a very important point you mentioned about the mismatch of skills. And that is quite consistent because turnover in some of the developing countries is relatively very high when we're talking about mainstream schools. And therefore, I think, again, the teacher training, again, needs to have a really robust planning in terms of how, the government kind of really supports them to encourage them to retain in the work by providing probably trainings that Dr. Hanani mentioned, and also some incentives, for example. All right, so we'll move on to Ms. Prasanthi for your response, please.
Children with disabilities will grow up into adults with disabilities. And if we don't empower them and get them the right interventions at the right time, then they're just going to end up being a liability to the society. So with that, again, like I told you earlier in my presentation, education is the equalizer. And for us, what we have realized is if we want to bridge that gap, and if we want to work towards making our children with disability productive members of society, then in order for them to get an education, the mindset of the parents has to change. It's like right now in Bhutan, I think we are a very spoilt population because our king and government has been looking after the population. From the time you're born till the day you die, like your education is free, your health care is free, and if you have any kind of problem, you just go to, in our language we call it kidu, so you just go to the kidu office and you present your case and your problem is taken care of. So what has happened is we've developed a very laid back, taken for granted sort of an attitude. And what we are trying to do in Pensem is change this mindset. Like, okay, you have a child with a disability. First of all, it does not give you the license to relax and try and get stuff. You have to work for it. It is your responsibility. Don't wait for the government. Of course, it is the state's responsibility to look after your vulnerable sections of the population, but you need to make an effort yourself too. So right now, this is what we are doing. We're trying to change this mindset from moving from charity to responsibility to rights. So, and for us, just to tell you the meaning of our name, Pensem, it can be taken in many contexts, but my favorite is positive attitude. So we want to have a positive attitude. We want to believe, we want to make our parents, the parents of the children with disability, believe that it is possible to do something for your child with a disability. It is possible to dream of a positive future and work towards it. And we call ourselves a self-help group, and we say, okay, you need the government support, but just don't sit back and wait. Get up and start doing something yourself. So right now for us, the key factor is, I think, the mindset of the parents.
Thank you, Ms. Prasanthi. And again, a very important point in terms of how this dependency really leads you, or you're stuck with this charity mindset, and you just can't move beyond that. And And having said that, I mean, in East Asia alone, I think we have more than about 450 million children with disabilities, yeah, and they still continue to face severe educational opportunities, and children with disabilities have lower probability of entering mainstream schools compared to non-disabled children, and by the time they enter adolescence, I think many youth with disabilities run really high risk of being illiterate, leading to unrestricted opportunities, for further education. And I think that really excludes them from community participation and interaction in the formal years. So transition into adult independence in the real world can be particularly challenging. Hence, I think, again, education for all children and youth is really essential and critical for realizing their potential. So thank you, Ms. Prasanti. Ms. Carol Tia?
За хөгжлийн бэрхшээлтэй иргэдийн боловсролын хосродлыг арилгахад бол одоо салбар дундын удирдлага санхүүжилтийн тогтолцоог сайжруулах хэрэгтэй гэж үзэж байгаа.
It is crucial to improve the intersectoral management and financing system in order to eliminate the educational gap with the children with the disabilities.
Өнөөдрийн байдлаар Монгол улсад нийгмийн хамгааллын яам, эрүүл мэндийн яам, боловсролын яам бүгдээрээ хөгжлийн бэрхшээлтэй хүүхд залуучуудад бол янз бүрийн дэмжлэг үзүүлдэг.
The Ministry of Mongolian Education, we are trying to help and access the education to all children with the disabilities.
Тэгэхдээ тэд нөгөө одоо яг хөгжлийн бэрхшээлтэй хүүхэд залуучуудын амьдралын чанарт нөлөөлөхгүй тохиолдол их байгаад байгаа.
But that education is not in the reality, doesn't go to the ground.
Жишээлх юм бол хөгжлийн бэрхшээлтэй оюутан үн төлбөргөө сурдаг, эсэг их нь хөгжлийн бэрхшээлтэй бол үн төлбөргөө сурдаг гэдэг одоо манай тийм заалтууд хэрэгждэг.
From the government support, we have free access to education to the children who with the disabilities.
Хөгжлийн бэрхшээлтэй хүүхдүүдэд хувьсах зардлыг бас 3 дахин нэмэгдүүлж өгдөг. Цэцэрлэг сургуулийнхаа хүүхдүүдэд 3 дахин нэмж өгдөг, 3 дахин нэмэгдүүлж өгдөг. Жишээлбэл ердийн сургуулийн хүүхдэд сая төгрөг өгдөг бол хөгжлийн бэрхшээлтэй хүүхдэд 3 сая төгрөгийн хувьсах зардлыг өгдөг гэсэн үг.
And also 34% of children from poor families do not participate in education well, so they grant award students with disability as well as family, 3 children studying at the same time. However, there is a little financial support for the children from poor families to pursue higher education.
Тэгээд одоо яг энэ бүх юмыг ингээ сайн болгохын тулд бид насан туршийн боловсролын одоо бодлогоо боловсруулж эхлэдэг байгаа. ЮНЕСКОгийн одоо дэмжлэгтэйгээр.
Therefore, the UNESCO Institute is for the lifelong learning. Will organize the training in the field of intersectional of management together with the government for the inclusive education policy in Mongolia.
Thank you, Ms. Geraltia. It was a little challenging for me to understand, but I think what you meant was financial support and stability is equally very important, and the government is really doing that. So thank you very much, Ms. Geraltia. So we'll move on to our next question. The other question is, how can you sustain the good practices from the last 2 years to address gaps in education for children with disabilities? They've mentioned 2 years, probably your experience from the COVID-19 probably, because last 2 years we've been through that and nothing else. So it might be very interesting to hear from each one of you. Dr. Hanani, please.
Okay. For Simusen, I think COVID-19 is a blessing in disguise, as with this online training we can reach out so many participants. Sometimes our webinar reach out to more than 12,000 participants, and of course the online teaching and learning happening, and teachers are very creative in coming up with creative ways to teach students, and also there are many learning platforms being innovated by the teachers group and also the government. And after post-COVID, as for the training, the participants, they really want that face-to-face training, because to them it is more effective. And we have to some sort of balance that. To have that on face-to-face training, it is more costly, as we invite participants from the other CMU member countries. But with this online training, we need that internet connectivity, and of course we need to make sure the materials presented can be understood by the participants, and of course it should be accessible. Then again, okay, there are also issues of digital divide. And I think COVID-19 has taught teachers, school administrators to be creative in providing the learning materials, the learning toolkits, for teachers and also students who faced this digital divide. And I think to sustain that, of course, like what I saw on the Mentimeter funding, okay, there should be specific funding to ensure that, okay, let's say to address the digital divide. Online teaching and learning, okay, that is going to be practiced in years to come. The government, I think, should provide faster connectivity, and also the gadgets for children, and also for the schools, so that more children can access to education. That is one. And then teachers, they need, okay, because of COVID, they experiment, okay. They experiment doing things. They become creative. They do trial and error, and they manage to survive. But I think we need to invest on teachers. We need to train them properly on how they should reach out to students, especially those with disabilities. And I think every teacher should be able to teach every child with disabilities, and we should invest in training those teachers. And of course, it's easier to be said than than done. But I think to encourage and motivate teachers to, to seek knowledge and to get themselves being trained, I give you an example of D-Team online course, okay? For an example in Malaysia, for special education teachers, there are 16,000 special ed teachers, but only 1.7% completed the course. And of course, I think GPA has invested a lot in preparing that online course, and I think that the team course should reach out to as many teachers as possible, and also not only teachers but to the caregivers and also advocates for children with disabilities, and of course funding, and also the policy of encouraging teachers to be trained. Certification, perhaps certain motivation of having to be certified in certain courses would motivate the teachers to get themselves training and prepared to sort of reach out to students with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nani. And as much as we've had negative experiences from COVID-19, I think, like you mentioned, there are quite a lot of positive experiences as well. And one of the positive experiences also having, the community coming together to really address the challenge of, let's say, children with disabilities. So, for example, the government, civil societies, and NGOs, organization of persons with disabilities really grouped together because the COVID-19 sort of really revealed us to such a situation that everybody had to work together. So there was this collaborative approach and support. And having said that, with your teachers and parents, I think I also remember some parents saying that, they really got some bonding time with their child with disabilities at home. And I can also see they've mentioned that reinforced learning at home and accommodating learning styles and disabilities and be mindful of how to use technology. And in this process, I think the teachers also got very, very creative because they were at home and, they got their time, I think. So it was less stressful. Although for children with disabilities, going to mainstream school is already very rare. But when they were unable to go, I think what some of the teachers really did was to have come up with a very interactive peer lessons online, which brought them, opportunities for peer-to-peer interaction and learning. So, of course, there's definitely been a lot of positive learnings as well, and I think we are sort of well prepared in a way for any emergency situations or natural calamities as such poses. So I'll move on to Ms. Prasanti for your response.
The lessons we learned during the pandemic, and one of the things was, like, since yesterday we've been hearing a lot about the digital divide, and in Bhutan too, it was like lessons were delivered online, and like for my son, he would have his Zoom lessons, and for people out in the rural areas, those who don't have smartphones, the TV was, the national television channel was used to broadcast lessons, and the teachers, I think, worked very hard to prepare those lessons, but I don't know how much the children got because the teachers were there in the screen, on the TV or the smartphone, whereas it was the parents who had to work equally hard, if not more, to make sure those children understood, even a little bit. So this was there, but we also learned, like especially for children with disabilities, that technology IT can be used as an accessibility tool. Like I told you before in my presentation, the capacity of a child to learn, even till now in my country, is based on the child's ability to read and write. And when we say write, holding a pencil and reading the typical way. But the pandemic showed us that there's so much we can do. You don't need to be able to actually physically, typically read and write to be able to get an education, you know. So now we are looking at this as the next step. How can we use technology as an accessibility tool? And for us, obviously, because for the children with disability, it's the parents who have to be empowered and trained, because they are the ones who will then be able to take it on to their children. And sorry. And another thing we did, like I told you, was the transition planning for moving the children back to school. And when we did that, it was with capacity from, or experts who came in from Perkins International to do an online workshop for a small group of parents to start preparing the children to go to school. And when we saw that, we realized that this kind of a transition planning has a huge impact, and it has scope just beyond transition. Like, we can use this to plan the child's entire life, you know. And so we started this project, we call it the Positive Future Planning, and we are in the second year right now. So we have we're basically actually building up our institutional capacity so that we don't have to depend on experts from outside to do it. So we have a group of trainees who are undergoing this process right now. They finished the first half of the training, which is like basically the theory and the basics of it, the knowledge behind it. Now they're actually actively working with parents. So by next year, we will have a group of, we can call them facilitators or mentors or coaches, who will work with families to have individualized life plans made for these children. And so this is also a way for us to motivate our parents and show that it is possible when you, you are, the vision is yours. We just, the facilitators, the coaches are just showing you the direction, and it is possible to have a dream for your child, a positive dream. So that is one thing. And I also want to briefly touch upon what Dr. Hanani was talking about. Every teacher has to be educated or trained on how to teach a child with disability. And this is perfectly in line with what we have been thinking about and doing. Just before the pandemic happened in 2019, actually, Pensem, we were not even registered that time. We were an informal group trying to make our voices heard. So with the support from Helvetas, we did a small pilot project with 2 primary schools, privately run primary schools in Thimphu, which are like mainstream schools. So we wanted to see if we can make the school truly inclusive. And what we did was we had intensive training workshops, not just for designated SEN teachers, but for every teacher in the school. And when we say every teacher, I'm talking about the Zonka language teacher, the PE teacher, even the caregiver who helps to look after the children during breaks and everything. And besides that, side by side, we also had the parents undergo this training. So then, and after that, it was at the beginning of the term, we did a 1-week intensive. And after that, 9 children were enrolled in one school and 2 children in the other school. And then the schools took off, and it wasn't, these children were not segregated. They were kept in the mainstream classroom. They had the same curriculum as the mainstream, the other typically developing children, but their way of learning, it was modified and adapted, and goals were shifted a little bit, but it was possible. And in that 1 year, we could see such a big change, not just in the children with the disabilities, but the other children in the classroom. Their mind totally changed, So now, looking at this, we can see that it is possible. So now, post-pandemic, we are actually now working towards rolling out this in a few select schools in Bhutan, and we're still in the planning process, and we are looking at support from Save the Children. They really like our ideas, so I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you so much. This is brilliant. And again, just one of the biggest challenge of this digital divide or e-learning was this was something very, very new, sudden. It was introduced, and children with disabilities or parents really didn't know how to use it. And there is a huge chunk of population that do not know how to use e-learning or internet, for example. They don't have access, they don't have phones. So I think that's a very good reminder for for policymakers or when we are revisiting our strategies or planning a budget, that we factor this in, that we need additional resources for e-learning support and IT. Ms. Carol Tia, we are running a bit out of time, and after this we'll open the floor for Q&A. So Ms. Carol Tia.
Okay.
За ер нь боловсролын бүх төвшөнд нөгөө сургалтыг хуульбарт хэлбэрүү болгох эрх зүйн баримтчүүдийг маш хурдан гаргасан.
Legally different forms and opportunities for alternative education at all levels of education has been allowed in Mongolia.
Тэгээд 20 онд бол одоо бүх хичээл хөдрийнхөө 47%-ийг 21 онд бол 62-аас 68%-ийг бид нэр одоо захим хэлбэрээр зохион байгуулсан.
In 2019-2020 academic year, children of general education schools studied their lesson at the school, which is only 47% of the total lessons, and planned to be studied in the class mode, and 62.5 to 68% were studied remotely and online learnings at the family environment.
Тийм учраас түрүүний миний хэлсэн одоо интерактив хичээл, захим хичээл, тэл хичээлийг аль болохоор хөгжлийн бэрхшээлтэй хүүхдүүдэд хүртээмжтэй хэлбэрээр одоо хүргэхийг хичээсэн.
Because of this numbers, the Ministry of Education access the education to the children with the disabilities with the online.
Бас хамгийн их анхаарсан юм нь бол төгсөх ангийн хүүхдүүдэд тусад нь одоо яг эсэлтийн шалгалтанд бэлдсэн хичээлүүдийг бас зохион байгуулсан.
And from that we especially focus on those who are about to graduate from the high school, and separately open the TV learnings and online courses for them to facilitate for them to study.
За тэгээд энэ ковидоос гарсан одоо сургамж гэдэг юм уу те, энэ сургамжаас энэ хичээлийн жилээс бид нэр захим сургуулийг анх удаа Монгол улсад нээгээд 10 дугаар ангийн 10,000 гаруй хүүхдийг одоо захим сургуульд оруулсан байгаа.
Because of this pandemic, we special attention to the students. Also, we enrolled around 10,000 students enrolled in these digital education sites to study.
Тэгээд тэдэнд тэр захим сургуулийн багш нар гэж захим сургууль гэдэг бол байшин байхгүй онлайн орчинд байгаа сургууль хамгийн сайн багш нараар хичээл заалгаж байгаа.
That special online for the graduate students. They collect the best teachers around the country, and many best teachers are there and to access the education for the children.
Цаг байсан бол маш их дэлгэрэнгүй хариулах байлаа, цаг байхгүй учраас.
That's all for some. So I'm sorry for the time's out. So this is the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And it's really good to know how you've been reaching out to communities, from community workers to volunteers, teachers, to reach out to children with disabilities. And I've also I've known projects from Mongolia where youth with disabilities have been really very active in reaching out and supporting some of the government initiatives. So thank you very much. So we'll now leave the floor open if you have any question and answers, question for the speakers.
Hello, good morning. My name is Cornelia. I'm from the International Labour Organization. I have a question to speaker for Pansam from Bhutan. My question is, what kind of evidence have you seen in terms of improvement of children when the parents are being supported? And the second question is, what do the governments do in terms of supporting parents? And I also have a question to the speaker from Mongolia. I would like first to applaud your inclusive education policy. And I have a question related to that. How is the policy is actually being implemented specifically for TVET? Technical and Vocational Education and Training.
Especially for what? Sorry.
TVET, Technical and Vocational Education and Training. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Questions actually too. So with regards to the evidence, I mean, we have some facts and figures. I don't have them here today, but you'll be able to get them if you go on our annual report and all that in the website. But in terms of just observing, like we have seen an increase in the number of children that have been, I wouldn't say enrolled, because everybody does enroll in the school because education is free, but staying on. I have, we have seen the children with disabilities have stayed on, and with regards to our pilot project, we could see, visible changes in not just the child, but the attitude of the parents as well. And it was the child, especially with regards to invisible disabilities, ADHD and autism and all that, it was, you could actually see the children settling down in class, learning to follow instructions, and I mean, things like, just to give you a very physical, live example, like there was this little boy who at the beginning of the year was he just wouldn't sit still, and he would just run around the school throwing off lunch boxes. You know, our children, there's a little designated place, they keep their packed lunch boxes over there. So he would just go and toss it all out, and then we had people running after him, trying to control him. And by the end of the year, this little boy was actually performing in the school concert, you know. I mean, it was so heartening to see. So actual physical things like that. So, and we have also seen parents, in the beginning when we would meet them, they would be very quiet, and the attitude was basically like, and what's the point? And now we have parents who are actually speaking up and talking about what can we do, like what's next. So we have seen this kind of physical changes, actual changes. And with regards to the support from the government, as of now, like I told you, the national policy for persons with disabilities was just passed by the government 2 years ago. So at least we have a policy in place now. And it was good to see that Pensem was involved in the drafting of that policy. So we made sure everything is covered, at least from our perspective. And at the moment, the only support we have from the government is in terms of the free health care and the education that we have. But that is across the population to everybody. There's nothing like specific for families or children with disabilities per se at the moment. Does that answer your question?
асуулт асуусанд баярлалаа.
Thank you for asking question.
Монгол улс бол маш цөөхөн хүн амтай 3 сая гаруй хүнтэй.
The Mongolia population is small.
Тэгэхээр хөгжлийн бэрхшээлтэй хүүхэд насны хүн бол 11,000 гаруй хүүхэд байгаа.
Around 11,000 children with the disabilities from that population.
Тэр хамрагдах одоо сургуульд хамрагдах насны хүүхдүүдээс өнгөрсөн жил ихэд 1800 гаруй хүүхэд сургуульд хамрагдаагүй. Сургууль сурах хэрэгтэй хүүхдүүдээс. Үгүй 1800 хүүхэд.
Study says last year 1,800 students could not enroll their education access
Тэгэд энэ хүүхдүүд нь бол яг танхимд ирж сурах боломжгүй хүүхдүүд байсан.
because they have disabilities and they cannot walk and cannot come to the school in the classroom.
Тийм учраас 12 сард сайд тушаал гаргаад тэр хүүхдүүдэд явуулын багш ажиллуулахар болсон.
Because of that situation, the Ministry of Education, we arranged the schedule and then send the teachers to reach out the home and to access with them and talk with them and asking what are they doing, how are they doing.
Бид нар танхимд ирж чадж байгаа хүүхдээ аль болохоор тэр хүүхдийн өөрийнх нь одоо хамгийн дээд түвшинд нь ямар нэгэн байдлаар боловсрол эзэмшүүлэх, танхимд ирж чадахгүй байгаа хүүхдүүд нь багшийг явуулж ажилуулахаар одоо ингээд бид нар хичээж ажиллаж байгаа.
That's the strategy for Mongolian teachers. Those who can come to this classroom, we reach out them and teach them as much as possible. And those who cannot come to the classroom, we go to their home with the scheduled teachers. That's all for the question. It's including the disability children, no? Specifically 1,800 children out of school. Sorry, thank you.
Any other questions?
In Thailand, many parents of disability people, for example, autism children, they cannot accept that their children are autism, so that close up their mind and don't send their children to the school to get the medication. Have you ever experienced on this, and how you solve this problem? Thank you.
Do you want to answer? Dr. Hanani, Ms. Prasanti, Ms. Gerald here, from your experience.
I think I would like to volunteer to answer your question. This is based on my experience when I worked at the Malaysian Autism Center, I think a few years back, when the center was under the Prime Minister's department, and it is an early intervention center. And of course, we do have parents who are in denial. Okay, they couldn't accept that their children were diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, and what more if the children have challenges such as behavioral issues. But I think what we did at the center, because one of the objectives is to empower parents. Parents need to be given knowledge about autism, and then they need to be given the skills on how to handle their children at home, because the children come to the center 5 days a week from 8 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But then they will go back, and whatever the children learn at the center need to be reinforced at home. And then coming to term with autism spectrum disorder, that is also something that need to be addressed. And back then, when this center started, every weekend, once every month, okay, the Saturday is dedicated for parents training. And I cannot, stress. I cannot stress anymore the importance of training the parents, to empower the parents, so to come to terms with accepting the children. When they come for that parents training, they will meet other parents and they share, experiences, and little by little, they when you have people around you who are in the same shoes, you tend to be more accepting. So it is very important to have that parent training. I think that a structured training.
Very quick responses, if possible.
Just to, again, kind of talk along the same lines as Dr. Hanani, for us, especially with parents of children with invisible disabilities, have a very hard time accepting that their child has, a disability, is not developing typically. So for us, what we are doing in PenSim is we have something called peer counseling, and we have a group of parent volunteers who've kind of had some basic training on mentoring and counseling fellow parents. So I think what happens is, for a parent who's kind of unsure about things, it's easier for that parent to talk to, listen to, and share to another parent as opposed to a therapist or a doctor or a subject matter specialist. We have a lot of parents who come to PenSim and say that my child has no problem, just some speech delay. But we can see that the child is on the spectrum, and it takes time, but I think normally it's a lot of peer counseling and sharing and mentoring that helps. And we also have something called a parents potluck every month. So the first Sunday of every month we have a potluck where the parents are welcome to come in with some food, and we just do some fun things together, and we talk about our problems. And it takes time. Acceptance takes time, especially in case of invisible disabilities. But if it is the acceptance, I think, comes sooner if you're talking to another parent.
Ms. Geraldine, quick response, please.
Монгол улсад бол одоо тусгай сургууль сурах уу, ердийн сургууль сурах уу гэдэг эцэгхийн сонголт байдаг.
In Mongolia, the parents depends on the parents who are deciding that sending the children to go to school at the mainstream school or special school. It depends on the parents. We cannot force them. It's up to them.
Аутизмтай хүүхдүүд бол мэдээж ердийн сургуульч байгаа, тусгай сургуульч байгаа.
According to the Mongolian law, everybody right to have study in access in any education, any institute. So
аутизмтай хүүхдийн хувьд бол бид нар бол эцэгт нь аль болохоор сургуульд нь дасан зохицоход хугацаа өгөхийг өөрсдөд нь зөвлөдөг.
So we collaborate with the parents and advise them to try to send the children to go to school, which school you want to go, and then try and adjust, and then you make a decision which school comfortable for you to send your children.
Яг энэ аутизмтай хүүхдэд ажиллахдаа бид нар хамгийн их түвшинт ажилладаг юм нь бол төрийн бас байгууллагууд, яг энэ чиглэлээр ажилладаг төрийн бас байгууллагуудтай маш сайн ажилладаг.
The government very well collaborate with the NGOs for this specific topic, and then the children with the autism, the NGOs help a lot.
Бид нар яг тусдаа тэгж одоо төвд ч юм уу тусад нь гэрт нь аль болохоор байлгахыг хичээдгүй, тийм бодлого барьдгүй учраас багч гэсэн ахис гарч байгаа гэж одоо дүгнэж байгаа.
According to this situation, we can see the improvement of the parents who are sending the children to the school with the disability and then with the autism. We can see improvement. They are deciding and sending.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And autism again it's again under the invisible category of disability. So I think what I'd really say is assessment is really key, and then the parents' role, and then reaching out to the support services that you all mentioned is very important. So now we are coming to close this session now, and I think from this session it's pretty clear that education transformation can only happen if the right of children, including children with disabilities, is upheld. And some of the points that I could really sort of consolidate is probably inclusive education by focusing on the well-being and success of students with disabilities is a means of achieving high quality education for all children and young people. I think there was also a mention of budgets, a progressively increased budgetary allocation for disability inclusive education. I think it's also really important to set a medium or to a long-term target to ensure all learners with disabilities are reached in all education programs, and ensure all education programs and grants mainstream disability and include disability inclusion criteria and targets. So just for your information, I am just taking this quick opportunity to introduce you to let you know that we have this disability inclusive working group in Asia Pacific, which is co-chaired by UNESCO, UNICEF, and Lana Chusha, and some of our Dr. Hanami is also one of the co-members. And this working group has been set up to realize inclusive and equitable quality education for children with disabilities across Asia Pacific, expressively by providing technical and advocacy-based support that leads to the inclusion of all children, including those with disabilities. So I think what we must really continue to do is support such efforts, such as this conference, to commit to transforming education so that every child, including children with disabilities, can access quality, equitable, inclusive education and lifelong learning. Thank you very much, speakers and participants, for your contributions today. Thank you very much.
And thank you all of speaker and our moderator also. All right, everyone. So this is the morning session. Next, we want to inform you about the details of our lunch and for afternoon session. First of all, I would like to tell you about our lunch table. So for the room is World City for the 24th floor, and we will open around 12, yeah, and until 1 p.m. So we will back again for this room to start our afternoon session. And after this, we will have a summary session for the fourth. Also, I would like to invite all of you to come here again. So maybe we will start at the 1 or before 5 or 10 minutes. So please enjoy your lunch and we will be back again. So thank you very much.